You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show. If your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from a local area and around the world. We've been very fortunate in this show to have interviewed some of the world's best athletes, sports people involved in sports, football across a wide range of disciplines. The aim of the show is to increase participation of sport and awareness. We also are very fortunate to have interviewed some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields, and we really want to make a difference in this show and increase awareness of different programs, sports related, mental health related, and we've been very fortunate to have people on the show who share some of their insights today. A special guest and a fantastic program who will be able to tell us more about what it involves and what it's about. It's called Sporting Memories, and Trevor Rollinson and Viv Loder are going to join us on the show and tell us a bit more about what they do, what's involved in Sporting Memories, and provide you with contact details at the end if you want to know more about it or get involved. So, Trevor and Viv, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you on board. I mean, I've looked at the details, and I think it's really, really fascinating what you guys do, and I suppose for our guest, I mean, you can explain a lot better than me. Can you give us a bit of an insight for our listeners what Sporting Memories is all about?
Okay, so Sporting Memories is a national organisation. It's a registered charity. We're in our 10th anniversary year now. When it was founded, the objective of the organisation was to bring together people with dementia and their carers, older people, people who are isolated or lonely, and bring them together in a social setting with sport as a central theme.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose, and what we do locally is we have in Salford there are 4 Sporting Memories clubs. There's one at Langworthy Cornerstone. For those of you that know Salford, there's one at Swinton Gateway.
Yeah.
We have one at St Andrew's Church on Chadwick Road in Eccles, and we have a walking football club which we play once a week. We've actually played this morning in the rain.
Yeah.
So that's the setup. Nationally, there are 120 clubs nationwide, 4 of them in Salford.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realise there was that many throughout the country, Trevor. And in terms of the actual program itself, I mean, you mentioned sort of walking football. Just a bit of an insight in terms of what are some of the other, I mean, you sort of mentioned briefly there, but what are some of the other activities that sort of people can do in Sporting Memories?
What we tend to do, we get a mixed group of people, and before the pandemic, and now we've all started to meet up again.
Yeah.
We literally just sit round the table, and I did note down on Friday the conversations that we had for our 2-hour discussion, and that ranged from Ronaldo's diet, as we were eating our cheese on toast.
Yeah.
We then talked about the young lady, Emma Rakhanu, winning tennis. We talked about local Crown Green bowling clubs, and then we did a spot the ball and a quiz where we always give people multiple choice answers, so there's no embarrassment. You've always got a chance of getting a question right.
Yeah.
It's kept quite light-hearted. At a couple of the venues we can introduce as well indoor curling or throwing the beanbag, so you're actually getting people who might have limited mobility even doing a little bit of something as that, a little bit of movement and coordination as well.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the times we have our meetings scheduled to run for just less than 2 hours. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty now, the number of times we have to say to people, well, we'll go, but we can leave you here, because the chat just carries on and on and on. It centres around sport, as we say, and we know there'll be big discussions about Anthony Joshua's fight and who's what and who's done what. We also get people to come in. Brian Carney, famous in the rugby league world, has actually been on our Zoom meetings throughout lockdown to chat to people.
Wow.
So it's quite varied.
That's really interesting stuff. That's really fascinating. I mean, it's sort of great conversations, and certainly you've mentioned there some really big topics in sport. And what's it like to connect for the participants? I can imagine. I mean, these are really powerful discussions that we've all got our say about Ronaldo and the boxing and so on and so forth. But I mean, what's it like for the participants to engage in these conversations? You mentioned there that some of them want to stay on afterwards. Do they get a lot? I can imagine they get a lot out of it, really.
Well, they clearly do. And one of the features of the meetings is that there's such a varied background. There's people from all sorts of backgrounds. We've got people with dementia and their carers. We've got grandparents that have brought along their grandchildren as well. And they've become social clubs. We do discuss sport. It is the central theme. But what's also fabulous to see over the years that we've been doing it, that people that have lived on their own, been very isolated, have come together and have made friends. People have discovered a mutual love of cricket, where a couple of chaps who hardly left the house at one stage now go to Old Trafford to watch the cricket together. And we don't just discuss sport, because everybody now knows each other's families and different bits about their lives and their backgrounds. So it is sport, but there's a great interaction between everybody. And as I say, social club. But you can taste the delight in the place. You can feel the atmosphere. It's lovely. It's loved. And we always have, at each of the meetings, we start with, in the morning meeting, the one at Langwither, we start with breakfast. We'll have breakfast together, and then we retire to a room and discuss sport. And it's all free. So, good interaction between everybody.
No, that's
right, yeah. So you'd be surprised at the memorabilia that people have in the homes. And once we get chatting, we've had a gentleman bring in the contract that Sir Matt Busby actually signed, that was bidded for at auction. We've seen a ticket that Muhammad Ali signed at the back of the 1966 World Cup.
Yeah.
And what people tend to do is they'll watch sport with a difference now. They say on the telly, if you're watching it in the week, and they'll say, and we want to talk about that at Sporting Memories, particularly when there's all the controversy with the VAR.
Absolutely.
So we get fisticuffs about it, but there's some very, very strong views and opinions, which are brilliant for people to bring into that forum.
I think it's amazing. I think the sort of connection that people can make is really, really powerful. I think sort of going back to sort of what Trevor said before, in terms of people getting to know each other, and then I mean, socially is one thing we've sort of, I mean, a lot of us have sort of learned in the last year or so is how important it is to have a social group and people to connect to. And do you find that people sort of, it's an opportunity for people to make friendships and sort of carry these friendships on away outside that environment as well?
Well, they certainly do. As I say, a couple of the chaps that now go to Lancashire together, there was one or two people that have season tickets at different grounds who now meet up before the games or after the games and socialise together. We've had occasions where a few people have gone to each other's houses and met up. So, as I say, it's a place where friendships are being built, and a lot of the time friendships with people who, prior to attending our meetings, have felt very lonely. You know, there could be some widowed people, people with not as mobile as they used to be, not an awful lot of incentive to get out of the house. So yes, they form friendships, they meet outside, it grows beyond just the Sporting Memories meetings.
Absolutely, and that's really interesting, Trevor. I find that sort of, quite fascinating in terms of, I mean, for our listeners, you sort of mentioned there the sort of demographic, the type of people who come along. I'm sure there's all sorts of different people find themselves in all sorts of different situations, really. But just as an insight, just for our listeners sort of listening in, you mentioned there some people are widowed and mobility. Generally speaking, what sort of people attend the actual meetings? What's the sort of general demographic and background of people who attend the meetings?
Well, it's an incredible age range. I think the youngest person that's a regular member is 60 and the oldest is 82.
88. Linda's 88.
Oh, 88.
Wow.
I stand corrected. So we've got somebody that's Linda's 88. We've got people that are 60. It's men and women. We've got people from professions, from trades, from all, as I say, all different backgrounds. And one of the delightful things, particularly on the walking football, is it's almost become intergenerational. As grandparents have said, is it okay if I bring my grandson next week? And we say, yeah, by all means. So to be playing walking football, as one of our members said, if somebody had told me that I'd be out on a football field kicking a ball 2 years ago, I would never have believed them. But there he is now. He's 82 years old. He's playing walking football and he's passing the ball to his grandson on the wing.
Wow.
So, a very broad demographic indeed.
I mean, you mentioned walking football there, Trevor. I can imagine. I mean, what's the atmosphere? What's the sort of exercise and the endorphins? And I can imagine the buzz for the participants playing football, where you get there and after the game, there's a buzz, a feeling. After playing walking football, do you get that sort of buzz? I mean, it's like you mentioned there, people who haven't played for a long time, or to be able to get out there on the pitch and pass the ball about and get involved. And do you get a really big buzz after the game, where people are sort of really buzzing, having played a game?
You do indeed. I mean, and you've got people breaking sweat, that have only managed to hobble along to the shops before now. Yes, a real good atmosphere, a buzz, and quite incredibly competitive. It's become over the few years that we've done it. And what's been marvellous is to see how much people have improved. People that hadn't kicked a ball, been on a field for years and years, all of a sudden they've rediscovered that they can pass a ball straight and they can receive a pass and pass it on. So there's a real buzz. It gets very competitive. But despite the fact that it's competitive, there's also a mutual respect amongst the people that are playing, because they recognise that some are more mobile than others.
Yes.
There are people that are playing that are living with dementia, so perhaps struggle sometimes to grasp the rules. But everybody's respectful of everybody else's situation and abilities. But yes, a real buzz.
We have our reporter as well.
Sorry?
We have one of our members who doesn't play. He cycles to watch, and then he does a little sort of newspaper article for us, and we share that online with people. Just as a little précis of the football match, so it makes it almost like semi-professional.
No, absolutely. I mean, I find it sort of quite inspiring that they get out there and have a go, and it's. I think I don't say it's easy, but sometimes you sort of. I think it's easy to sort of sometimes, especially during the pandemic, I think some people got left behind to a certain point with sort of the world changing and obviously things opening up again. There's a bit of anxiety for some people to get back out again. But this is great. I think it's a great support. It sounds really amazing. I suppose, just thinking about the walking football, is there like a referee to judge if someone tries to break into a stride or?
Well, that's quite controversial, that. So I refereed this morning, and after this morning's game I said, I'm not refereeing again. I'm not taking that much stick a second time, because people have become that competitive that they're questioning the decisions of the referee. So yes, we do nominate somebody as referee.
Yes.
But you have to be quite sharp to be the referee, because it's walking football.
Yes.
There is a temptation to run. And you do find people running off the ball, even if they're not running with the ball. But there are a couple of people there who say it's grossly unfair because they couldn't run even if they wanted to.
Yes, so, of course, I suppose after having a conversation about Ronaldo, it probably sort of turns back the clock for some of the participants, and sometimes we watch the game. I know from being involved in football myself, sometimes the mind says one thing and the body says something else. But I think that's amazing, really. I think walking football is great. For me, it's a revelation in terms of inclusion. It gets a lot of people involved that wouldn't necessarily probably play, which is a great thing. And I mean, in your roles, Viv and Trevor, I mean, what do you got? I mean, Trevor, I know you're a fantastic speaker from Toastmasters, but your roles within this organisation, I mean, what just for our listeners, what do you guys sort of? I can imagine that it's probably a show in itself, but what do you guys generally do within the organisation?
We tend to make sure everybody's okay. I think particularly once we were told we couldn't meet people face to face in March 2020, we had a decision to make, and that was either, okay, we'll see you in 12 months' time when the world wakes up and we'll get hold of you, or, as we chose to do, we introduced people to the world of Zoom. A lot of which didn't even know how to work their own computer, or they had to get the relatives in who were in the bubble, and that has actually developed into another family online, where we're still now holding regular Zoom meetings, and we've got people as far afield as Sutton Coldfield, the other side of Wigan, that actually join in with us on a Thursday on a Zoom meeting. So what me and Trevor do is we kind of put quizzes together, we discuss with each other the spot the ball, what we're going to do, should we get a prize, we may make observations about a person who might have seemed a little bit down in the dumps, so we'll make a point of contacting them during the week, just to make sure they're okay. And we just make sure that everybody's going to be there on either a Friday morning or afternoon. We do a little bit of research, and particularly now we're all watching what's happening on the sport, what can we talk about, would that work with Sporting Memories. We do get a lot of support from the actual foundation itself. There is a fantastic website, which again we use quite a lot in lockdown. We encourage people, once they could get on the computer, to just go in and have a look, and there's lots of stuff on there about historical sporting events, famous people if they want to read up on them, some word search quizzes. So there's a lot of supporting material given to Trevor and I from the organisation. Okay,
brilliant. So you've got material there, and so in terms of, I mean, you mentioned they've been involved for a while. Have you guys been involved for a while in terms of how sort of things sort of changed since your involvement? Things sort of, I mean, I know that the pandemic obviously would have changed things with technology and Zoom and going forward, but sort of since your own involvement, have you sort of seen any sort of changes in general, sort of from participation? Has there been an increase in people participating, or?
Well, we both started working for Sporting Memories around about the same time, and we were paired up as a team to set these groups up in Salford, because there were no groups in Salford at the time. So it really, our role has evolved as well. We had a very loose brief, it was about contacting people, getting in touch with local authority, getting in touch with organisations, which we did lots of publicity. And early on our meetings, we were very much feeling our way, different people coming to the meetings, deciding what to do with them. But they have evolved, our role has evolved, and they've grown and grown. So it's grown from 3 or 4 people to 30 odd people now across Salford, and consequently we're now even looking for volunteers to see if somebody else can get the same pleasure out of helping and running and participating in the meetings that we get.
Absolutely, and in moving forward in terms of sort of the vision, is it to sort of increase participation and get more people involved? Is that what sort of is the sort of vision moving forward?
Oh, certainly, everybody, as I say, we have, the numbers vary at clubs, but we are looking to encourage more people to come and join us now. Yes, we're open. We'll give a personal contact number at the end of the interview for anybody that's interested, and somebody will ring them back to have a conversation about how they get there, what goes on. The Sporting Memories Foundation website does have a lot of information on it, but we are at the moment actively wanting more people to come and join us, because we know there's a lot of people out there that love the sport and would just love to chat about it, and maybe don't know about us as an outlet. And also, as well, Trevor and I do have lives as well, so on the odd occasion, both of us may not be available for one day. We are looking for volunteers to come and assist us at our venues, which is obviously the purpose of us doing the radio interview with you.
Absolutely. And in terms of people like wanting to get involved, to sort of come down, and I can imagine, some people might be a little bit sort of nervous at first. I mean, obviously you guys are welcoming people, but for someone who hasn't who hasn't been socialising for a while and sort of considering it, what could you say to someone sort of listening in, maybe thinking, I want to get involved, but I feel a little bit sort of nervous to sort of pop down, and is there sort of any sort of message you could sort of put out there to people considering it but thinking, well, I'm not sure if I'm just building up that sort of, yeah.
I think first of all, you would be entering into a group, a very, very hospitable, welcoming group. Anybody that wants to get involved would be supported from day one by Viv and myself. We would take them along to each of the meetings. We would let them participate at their own pace in any way that they wanted to. Any volunteers would be given an induction. They're given training. They're given insight and training into dementia. It's the different types of dementia, what to expect when dealing with people with dementia. And as I say, we would talk and walk people through the whole process, and we wouldn't let go of the hand until they're confident in taking a meeting and participating on their own.
Brilliant. No, that's great stuff. Trevor, people listening in there who sort of might feel a bit apprehensive and not sure, that's sort of reassuring for them that they've got a mentor, if you want to call it that, or someone to guide them along the way. And I mean, not to sort of put you on the spot, but have you got, without sort of mentioning names or anything like that, but have you got sort of any sort of, has there been any sort of story in terms of your own experience of people who've come along and may have been a bit apprehensive and sort of really got involved? And I can imagine this is life changing for some people. I mean, it's a big call, but I can imagine for someone who hasn't got out there, who's sort of getting involved and getting around people and sort of being involved in activities, it can be life changing. But do you guys sort of reflecting on your time in sporting memories, can you sort of think of situations where people have come down and sort of it's been a big deal for them?
Well, there are several stories. There are endless stories of people that have joined us and have benefited from it. But I think one that stands out for me is that when we were setting up the clubs, there are lots of care homes in the area, and we contacted those care homes and went to visit and talked about how their residents might benefit by joining. And there was a chap, and I will mention his name, Eric, and the carers at the care home said that Eric, who was, I think he was about 80 at the time, they said he was a nice chap, but he hadn't been out of his room other than for meals and bath time for 18 months, and they were really concerned about him. And they invited me to go and speak to Eric, which I did, and I really did hit it off with Eric. He was a nice fella, and he agreed to come to the club in Eccles, St Andrew's Church, and he would come, pushed him in the wheelchair to the church. He participated in the quizzes. He actually turned out to be rather good at playing the carpet bowls and curling, which he did from his wheelchair. We have prizes for the winners, and he was constantly winning the prizes. He would say to the carers each week, are we going, he used to call it the church, are we going to the church today? Is it today that we go to the church? And it really did change the fella's life. It put a smile on his face. And what was amazing as well is that he was such an interesting character, and he led such a fantastic life. And he was now able to share some of his stories, and you could see the delight when he was telling these stories, when he was telling them to an appreciative audience. And I had to think to myself what a waste it would have been if he hadn't had that opportunity.
Absolutely.
He'd been a paratrooper, he'd driven a train, he'd been a lorry driver, and he told these tales, and it was just wonderful. It was heartwarming for me and Viv to see somebody that had basically given up on life get a new lease of life. Sadly, Eric passed away last year, but just, as I say, wonderful for us that the last 2 years of his life he had a real purpose, and it put a smile on his face.
Absolutely, that's really powerful stuff, Trevor. I think that's great that sort of people can get out there and interact and share, and still have a lot to offer, and this really is powerful stuff. And I mean, in terms of our listeners, I can think at the top of my head a lot of people who would sort of benefit through getting involved in a program like this. But in terms of our listeners, we mentioned before about the website and the contact details. Where can they go if they're sort of listening in, thinking, I'd like to know more about this and get involved?
Yeah, just literally for those with a computer, which most people do now, have a home computer, they just need to type in the two separate words, sporting memories, and that will bring up all the information, the website, and then what I'll do is I'll pass you over to Trevor, because he's very kindly said, rather than people leave an email which may not get answered, he's going to give you his personal mobile, and between us we will answer all questions that come in from that, from anyone that's actually listening, and doesn't not that confident on a computer, but would just like a chat to see if they want to bring somebody or to find out specific locations and times. I'll pass you to Trevor and he can give you his number.
Brilliant.
So shall I just read my number out, Jimmy?
Yeah, if you're happy to do so, Trevor, if that's it works for you.
So it's 07939 265 370, and if you call or text me on that number, I'll have a chat. I'll talk you through what we do. I'll talk you through when we do it, and hopefully we can recruit a few more people, and more people can enjoy what we do.
Absolutely. It's been great speaking to you, Trevor and Viv. I mean, it's been fascinating. I've sort of really think it's really fascinating, and no doubt our listeners have tuned in and sort of intrigued, really. I mean, some may be involved, and no doubt our listeners as well, and some might be contemplating it, but I think it's making a huge difference, and a huge difference in the area, which is what we want. We want people to get involved, to get out there and improve the quality of their life in every way possible. So I really want to thank you guys for coming aboard the show. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and long may the great work you continue. Keep going. Thanks again, Viv and Trevor, for coming on board the show.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, bye.
Thank you, Trevor. That was Viv Loder and Trevor Rollinson, who's been very kind enough to join us on Salford City Radio 94.4 FM and talk about sporting memories. And you've got the details there. Do get in touch. Do get in touch if you're sort of considering getting involved. It sounds like a really great program, and getting out there can only be a good thing. So Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show. Your host Jimmy Petruzzi, making a difference in sport, increasing awareness and participation in sport in the local area and around the world.